We are back with another episode of the Brothers in Law podcast, y'all. This is
What's
episode
up?
number
What's up?
5, y'all.
This is crazy.
Number
Thank you.
5. Happy to be here. For those who are tuning in for the very first time, the this podcast is a platform for us to break down our rights, our powers in a way that people can understand and follow, and use it to protect themselves rather than use it to be used against you. So thank y'all for being here. I got my humble host over here,
I'm
Mr.
here.
Blackburn,
I'm here.
my fellow brother-in-law.
Happy to pass on more game.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's
Yeah.
not free legal advice.
Yeah.
It's just free game. All
Just
right.
free game.
Okay. Today we are joined by another brother-in-law,
Mhm.
a friend, someone who's a part of our work family. I'm very happy to introduce you all to my boy Baba Tunde.
Batunde.
What's up, everybody? Thank
Thank
you
you
for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, this is a great platform. This is
Thank
a
you,
great
man.
platform.
Thank you. So today's episode is to introduce you all to Baba, what he does, and then Baba can also break down some of our rights and understand what things are like in the civil world as it pertains to being arrested. So before we get into any details into any specifics, Baba, I want to introduce people to you a little bit.
Mhm.
So you got hired same year we did, 5 years, 6 years,
Yeah, we almost
6 years now.
6 years, 2018.
Mhm.
IOTA,
Yep.
D9.
Yeah, D9.
You know, we got the black fraternities up
Ow.
here representing.
Iota Phi Theta
You know
Fraternity
what I'm saying?
Incorporated, of course.
Yeah, the resume is long. If anybody wants to know more, we definitely tune in about
Oh
that.
yeah, the resume, it's on LinkedIn. If you hit me up on LinkedIn.
Ohio State.
Oh yeah, Ohio State Buckeye. How can I
You know what I'm
forget? How
saying?
can I
We
forget?
can't forget Ohio.
Oh
I know
yeah,
you rock
can't
hard for them.
the Ohio State.
The
The.
Ohio. But yeah, man, thanks for being here. So my
You know.
first question for you before we get into any details is what led you to be a public defender? And yeah, why did you choose to come in and do that work here in the Bronx?
Well, what led me to be a public defender is I've always been politically conscious, so to speak. I read like Malcolm X's biography when I was 11, 12 years old. Would read history books for fun and do anything of that sort, would always be involved in politics. So it was just natural for me to want to become a public defender. I always was aware of the issues going on in our community,
Mm-hmm.
always was involved in it. As you mentioned, D9, being a part of a D9 organization really, really sparked my fire for wanting to be a public defender and wanted to, give back to our community.
Right.
So I always had that passion, came from a very political family too, as well. So I always had those talks within my household, still do.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just very easy for me picking a career path, English and history and everything. And the arts always came natural to me, more so than math. So it was just really easy for me to figure out what I want to do,
Yeah.
mixed with my passions.
Right.
And from there, it just made it happen. And then wanting it to be a public defender in the Bronx,
Yeah.
I am from the tri-state area. Went to other than going up to high school in Buffalo, I've lived and been around the New York City tri-state area the entirety of my life. Don't know anything different. I actually grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey,
Okay.
about 15, 20 minutes away from where we work at right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just always been involved in this area, just always wanted to be in the New York metropolitan area. And
Mhm.
it was just an easy transition after I got out of law school, come
Mhm.
right back home. So,
Yeah. And I was gonna say, so Baba's a public defender, but we do criminal work, right? Baba doesn't do criminal work.
Right.
New York is unique in the respect that you can get public defense for different types of legal issues.
Right.
So Baba, can you tell us like what area of public defense you work in?
Oh, yes. I am a civil public defender. And like you said, Conrad, a lot of people don't know what that is.
Right.
I think New York and what's unique about New York is that you're able to get a lot of different areas in public interest that
Right.
you aren't able to get around in the country.
Right.
And collateral consequences, a lot of people just don't realize, so to speak, unless you're actually going through it,
Mm-hmm.
that when you get arrested, there's a lot more than this happens than your freedom getting threatened.
Mhm.
Your job can get threatened, your housing can get threatened,
Mhm.
your children can get taken away from you. But in the sense of what I work with the civil collateral consequences. So that's housing, That's employment.
Mm-hmm.
That's also police misconduct. That,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times when you're hearing about your civil rights being trampled on, whether it's you're being assaulted by police or whether
Right.
they're taking your property unfairly, that's all the stuff that we are able to get into. Civil forfeiture,
Yeah.
to wrap that all up. But yeah, a lot of people just don't realize that there are civil collateral consequences, and that's what I deal with every day.
Okay. So this is a good segue. So the whole
Mm.
focus of this episode, well, the next couple episodes are going to be talking about what collateral consequences are. And just as you explained, it's exactly what you said. Anytime someone gets arrested, there are a myriad of things that are affected other than just your liberty.
Mhm.
Um, you're going to talk today about those civil collateral consequences.
Yes.
In the future, we'll have somebody come and talk about the family collateral consequences, ACS taking away their kids,
Yeah.
or the immigration collateral
Immigration.
consequences.
Mhm.
There are so many that if you get arrested, now you have to face these other challenges in your life.
So going to jail ain't enough.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh no!
It's like,
I mean,
Yeah.
apparently not to the man. A lot of times, even before you're convicted, you go to,
Right.
you get arrested. What people a lot of times don't know is if you have any type of license through the state or the
right,
city,
right.
they're notified as soon as you're arrested.
So let's start there.
Mhm,
Let's
mhm,
let's
mhm.
let's get into it since we opened the door already. So let's start with the employment collateral consequences. So you just said sometimes you get arrested, then notified if you have a special license. What are those licenses that you're referencing? What are some examples? And then walk us through the process of like losing the license or they're being notified, and then what you do to help them maintain that license.
Well, there's over 100 licenses within the state of New York that are notified automatically. But the main ones that I run into trouble with in my everyday work are TLC licenses.
Which is what?
What's that?
That's anybody who's driving Uber, Lyft, any ride share services, anybody who's driving taxi, the yellow cabs that you still see, going around here, especially in this area, in mid, lower Manhattan. Yeah, you'll see a lot of those people. As soon as they are arrested, unfortunately, they're actually suspended. So it's not even their employer is notified; their license is
Off
suspended.
rip.
Yeah, off rip. Yeah.
Wait, how do the employees get notified? So let's say they get arrested,
Mhm.
they get arraigned. At what point do their superiors get notified?
Well, if you're a yellow cab driver, you're employed by the TLC. That's a taxi, limousine, and cab commission. The people that basically run all the rideshare and everything. And if you are a part of a rideshare service company, you also have to get your license through the TLC in order to be able to qualify to work for those rideshare companies.
Mhm.
So if you're a part of the TLC, you're notified automatically.
Wow.
They're, of course, since they're the one giving you the license, they're also the one that automatically suspended on that.
So
that.
NYPD notifies them automatically?
Yeah,
Or who
NY,
notifies them?
no, DCJS, the criminal, the people when your rap sheets every single
Mhm.
time you get arrested,
Uh-huh.
they do your fingerprinting and they enter you into the system.
Uh-huh.
As soon as they enter you into the system, it's saying that you were arrested on this date and time.
Mhm.
The TLC is notified by DCJS.
Wow.
The TLC will just automatically take your license if you're a yellow cab driver. If you work for Lyft or Uber, that what they'll do is they'll notify Lyft or Uber and say that you no longer are qualified, you no longer are
Mhm.
certified to be able to work
Mhm.
for Lyft or Uber because we suspended this person's
Mhm.
license because of what we just saw about the arrest.
Is that regardless of what you're arrested for?
Yeah, regardless of what you're arrested for.
Wow.
Unfortunately, under the law, the TLC is allowed to do this. It's written within their code. They're allowed to be able to go ahead and suspend people's license. Now they have discretion, but they use that discretion to do it every single time. They just do it blanketly for everybody.
And so this is done bar none. There are no exceptions. Just automatically.
Yeah, just no exceptions. Just
Wow.
automatically, no matter what you're arrested for. If you're arrested, so it's like you can get arrested by the time you get down to the precinct. The DA is like, you know what? We don't even understand, or the police officers might be like, we don't even understand what this person got arrested for.
Right.
It might be a false arrest for something,
Yeah.
or they might decide, a week or two later that there's nothing there and they just want to dismiss the case.
Right.
Your license will still be suspended until the TLC is notified that that situation has gotten cleared up.
That's wild. Because I would understand if you're arrested for a DWI or
Right.
you're arrested for
Something related to
right, or
Mm.
maybe having an invalid license or your
Uh-huh.
license is suspended. I get those kind of suspensions, but you mean to say if me and Conrad get into a fight and I get arrested, my license will be suspended tomorrow?
Yeah, because the way that the TLC looks at it is they have to protect public safety. They have to be able to, you're dealing with all different types of riders coming from different types of places. You have to make sure that you won't attack or do anything.
Right.
So if you are arrested, they view that as you can, being of less moral, character, and you could possibly exhibit that on your customers. So if you get into a fight, if you all two get into a fight and you a TLC driver, they could say, well, if you're going to beat up your friend Conrad and that's your friend,
Right.
how do we know you're not going to beat up a passenger
Wow.
that, just talks wild to you or, doesn't tip you enough? So it's one of those situations where they use that against you. Any type of criminality, any type, especially if it's a violent crime, any type of, crime that deals with theft, they try to deal with that more with moral aptitude.
Gotcha.
They think about that and they're saying like, oh, we don't think you're safe to be put in public. That type of situation.
Wow.
So, we're in a special situation where we work, the organization we work at, because we have people like Babatuna that work there. So, we as criminal defense attorneys, if we have a client with a TLC who gets arrested, we should and have to automatically kind of what we call is refer. We tell Babatunde, hey, my client was arrested for XYZ. He has this license. So, Baba, when we do that, when we tell you that, what happens? What can you do?
Bob was actually my referral.
I know.
My cap attorney referral. But go ahead.
I mean, well, the first thing I try to do is I try to reach out to the client to, explain their situation to them. I want to make sure that, I'm here for the client. I want to make sure that I communicate to them like, hey, I understand what situation that you're in. I've seen this before, and communicate a clear plan on how we're going to rectify it. Then also too, after that, I want to check in with, somebody as you, if you're my referring attorney or another referring attorney, to make sure that I have and I understand what's going on in their criminal case. Because a lot of times there is a hearing that we could go to be able to dispute the suspension, to be like, hey, wait on, this person is not a public danger. We don't know what you're doing. If we have some certain facts and if the criminal case is going a certain way, that might be the best option. Sometimes if the criminal case isn't going a certain way, or, we can wait it out a little bit and it might end up favorably for the client, going to a hearing and doing that might not be the best option.
Can you elaborate on like what circumstance you would advise to go forward with the hearing and what circumstance you would not?
Let's say, for instance, that you were accused of theft, accused from taking something out of somebody's bag. If you have the person that you're accused of theft from saying, oh, no, they didn't take it, I found it later, or this person took it, we found out this person took it, something of that sort, basically mitigating the harm that you were accused of doing. If you have something of that sort, then I think that's a good thing that we can take. We can take that. We can be able to be like, dispute this suspension,
Right.
especially if we're going to use that in the criminal case.
Right.
Some of the things that we don't want to take to trial are things that we don't want to put our clients in any position where they may incriminate or put themselves in risk of perjury. If they say something at this TLC hearing trying to keep their job, a lot of times people may embellish, they may forget, a lot of things that could happen. They don't intentionally mean to lie, but it could put you in a situation where it could possibly leave you in danger for your criminal case,
Right.
which you don't want to do. You don't want to sacrifice your livelihood, so to speak, your freedom,
Right.
just for your livelihood. So it's one of those situations where you got to look, every circumstance is different. You got to look at how the criminal case is going. What can you say? What can't you say? But yeah, there are ways for us to help and advocate for clients to make sure that they can at least have a chance and be able to work while their case is pending.
And when you say whatever you say at the hearing could jeopardize you in your criminal case, what you mean is like if they testify to something, it'd be on record.
Yes.
And then if we end up fighting the case ourselves in the criminal court by going to trial or whatnot, they will have access to that record.
Yeah, they'll have
if they went on, the hearing and said something that, like you said, hurts them or incriminates themselves, then it kind of limits our ability to defend our clients because now they've already put this old statement out there that we have to now address.
Yeah, exactly. And it might put the clients in a bad position where now they have to go by this narrative. Because if they don't go by this narrative, then they can perjure themselves. And then,
How you deal with that, Baba? Because I mean, like, what does somebody do when they're like, it's either I try to keep my job and keep my livelihood and make money for myself and my family, or I try to stay out of jail and stay free. Like, what do you do in that situation where somebody's like kind of pushing, like, I need this money?
Yeah. I mean, to me personally, I I always view is that you can't make money if you're in prison.
That's a fact.
So that's the one thing that I always put to my clients. If you're facing jail time, if you're especially if it's for felony charges or anything of that sort, I always put that like, look, your first priority should be beating this case.
Your liberty.
Yeah, your liberty, because you can't make any money if you're out, if you're in prison.
Right.
But I can't tell somebody else what to do. All I can do is be able to put out all the options that you have on the table,
Right.
tell you from what I see from my expertise where these options could lead you. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to make that decision. Most clients, they choose, most people, they want to avoid prison or any jail time. Some clients, they're like, nah, I think I have a good case. I don't think I'm going to prison. And I also don't think I'm going to lose my job. So I'm going to fight both. I don't get a lot of those clients. I usually get
10 toes.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are just like, and I want to keep my freedom. Like, but I do have clients every now and then and be like, I'm fighting both. And the wind blows as it may for those clients. A lot of times it still does come down to them valuing their freedom over their job when it comes down to it. But yeah, most people value their freedom over their job. But my main job is to just basically make sure they know all the options.
And what are some other licenses that you, a common license that you experience people either getting suspended or just at risk of losing because of an arrest?
What's weird is because this license is not really a license. You need to get cleared by the state, but it's not a license. Home health aides. A lot of people and a lot of our clients, they'll get paid money to take care of a family member, a friend, or somebody in the community. It's a good way to make money. It's a good way to create a job for it's not job when there's not jobs available, and it also provides the service to the person who needs it. Because you aren't an RN or an LPN, a licensed practitioner nurse, or somebody within the health field per se, you don't have to get a license. But you do have to get cleared by the Department of Health to make sure that you are competent and that you could be able to take care of somebody. Because of this, it puts people in a weird situation, whereas they get fingerprinted in order to be able to become a home health aide. They don't have to get fingerprinted again until they renew their home health aide, certification. But now they're caught up in like this almost like mandatory reporting thing that happens because their fingerprints are on the system. Now, anytime their fingerprints hit, now Department of Health is notified of that. What Department of Health does is for a lot of it, they don't take away people's clearance, but they send a letter to their employer, because a lot of people are, they're employed as a home health aide through a third party.
Okay.
So they'll send a letter through their employer telling them like, hey, we're not telling you what to do, but just letting you know that one of your home health aides, they got an arrest out here. It's your responsibility, and you will get sued if you don't take care of the safety of your patients. But we're not telling you what to do. We're just letting you know that this person is out here.
Wow.
And you have an obligation to keep your clients safe. And so that scares a lot of employers. A lot of employers think I have to do something. They think that I have to suspend this person at least.
Right.
I have to take them off the schedule before I do an investigation, and I have to see this thing, bing, bang, boom. A lot of employers don't realize the only thing, unless Department of Health sent you the letter saying we took away this person's clearance and you have to take away this person off the schedule, or you have to make sure they don't come into contact with any clients, you can still keep that person on the schedule. You can still keep them employed.
Yeah. So is that what your advocacy comes into play for?
Yeah,
this?
that's what my advocacy comes into play. Like, I have to be able to explain to them, like, hey, I understand this letter. I understand what it says, but you have the discretion to be able to keep this person on, and you should because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Luckily, because of the Fair Chance Acts, which made it clear that people have to be able to get 5 days to be able to respond. Employers have to do these things in writing. And they just can't, and the suspension has to be reasonable while they conduct this investigation to figure out if they're safe to be brought back to work. Luckily, with the Fair Chance Act, we're able to actually have avenues for advocacy. But previously, people were just getting fired as soon as they were getting those letters. As soon as employers got those letters from the Department of Health before. And we would really have to work hard to convince an employer to rehire somebody, and that they didn't have to do that, or we would that would be the end of the situation.
Right.
And Baba, what does that advocacy look like? Are you busting up in the headquarters? Are you like writing letters? Are you calling people? What does that look like?
I mean, one, we want to check in with the client, because some clients, they don't like to ruffle feathers. So you have to check with the client what they're comfortable with. But after, the client's like, yeah, I want to fight, I want my job back, then, you do what you have to do. My first thing is I want to contact either the manager and the HR people to figure out what happened in the situation. And I'm like, basically write a letter. This is what my client has told me. This is how I see the situation. This is the information that I have. And this is why I think that you're violating the law for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Gotcha.
Send a letter. It's a mild threat, at the end of it, basically saying that, like, hey, if you don't do what you want us to do, we're going to have to pursue legal action. And that means taking a lawsuit up with the Commission on Human Rights within the city. But yeah, it was like, if you don't do what we think you should do, we think that you violated the law, then we're going to sue you. A lot of times that starts the conversations with the employers. Nobody wants to get sued, especially if you're a smaller employer. A lot of these bigger corporations, a lot of times they ignore us. Or, you have to then run it up the ladder. You have to keep calling and emailing and be persistent and, bugging people for weeks or months, until you finally get an answer. But for most people, if you're able to get into the, HR department, then that's usually when you start talking to legal and you start talking to HR and start having meetings and you figure out something. If you're able to clearly point out to them how they violated the law, usually from then it's able to get rectified. Employee gets back their job. Now working on getting them back pay. That's another issue that we have to get over, especially if they were suspended or out of work for a long period of time, where we were trying to figure this out. That's another hurdle that we'll have to come to. But if you're able to point out to them how they violated the law and able to show them that we're just not going to let this stand, then we're usually able to come to some sort of resolution. The issue is when the employer thinks that they were correct in what they did. They don't think they violated the law, and they're basically just like, all right, then do something then.
10 toes.
It's like that meme where the people looking at you like this.
Yeah, it's like the he who should not be named meme, and and the dude looking back at each other, just like, yeah.
Right. Okay. Security licenses. Do you interact with those often? Clients who are security guards who get arrested and then now that license is also suspended?
I interact with security guard licenses all the time. Security guard licenses rarely get suspended. I will say that in terms of for people with any sort of criminal record, I'll say the top two licenses from my experience that you want to deal with, security guard licenses or CDLs.
Got you.
Those two licenses.
And CDLs what?
CDLs is commercial driver's license. Those are for people that, truck drivers, the big rigs that you see on the highway. Also Amazon drivers, a lot of people, UPS drivers, a lot of people don't realize you need a CDL for those two as well. But yeah, those are pretty much the two licenses that I see that don't care too much about your criminal record history, just as long as it isn't violent felonies. In the case of CDLs, they don't even care about violent felonies. They just want to make sure that you aren't drinking and driving on the job. They want just make sure you don't have any alcohol related.
Okay. So to them, it's worse to have a DWI than it is to have like a robbery in the second degree.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Your license will actually get suspended for a year and banned indefinitely if you get 2 DUIs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if you get 1 DUI, it's automatic 1-year suspension. You get 2 DUIs, it's banned forever. And they're violations. Like, you don't even have a criminal charge,
right?
But you can never get a CDL if you get 2 DUIs.
Wow.
Like, so yeah, it's actually worse for a CDL to get a DUI than it is to get a felony.
Wow.
I mean, because to think about it, like, you're not really dealing with people when you're driving.
Yeah.
Like, it's
you're just driving.
Yeah, you're driving. Like, we need you to be safe on the road. We necessarily don't.
So, Baba, we heard a lot about employment, right? Like, are there other things that can happen to you because of an arrest that in this over realm that you see?
Oh yes. Unfortunately, and this is where I think our system is one of these things where the collateral consequences severely and unfairly impact uh, marginalized populations and people living in poverty,
Mm-hmm.
in low income areas, um, when it comes towards housing. Because if you live in any type of public housing, and you get arrested, this could potentially lead to you getting evicted.
Hold on, what?
Yes,
You could lose your house for getting arrested?
yes.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to explain. You're gonna have to say.
Right. And
Yeah.
in New York, that's what? That's public.
Public. So NYCHA, if you live in NYCHA,
Mm,
if you live in Section 8 housing,
mhm.
if you have FEPS, a lot of people have FEPS grants, other things of
What's
that
that?
sort.
Yeah.
FEPS is like it's only specific to New York City, which I've heard. It's basically for people combating homelessness.
Got you.
So if you have, or if you are in danger of homelessness, or you have come from the shelter, you are eligible for this grant to be able to. It's almost like Section 8,
Uh-huh.
but the requirements are is that you have to be two, I believe 200%. Unlike the guidelines just changed, but I believe it's 200% below the poverty line, and
Mhm.
you also have to had a bout with homelessness
Got you.
um, in order to be able to get this grant. But that is also it's subsidized housing, subsidized living. But any type of public housing or subsidized living, unfortunately, supportive housing too as well. An arrest could potentially affect your housing.
So elaborate on that. Talk to us about circumstances where you get arrested and you're on public assistance, and circumstances where that has led to evictions, and then talk about what your role is in that representation.
All right, I'll talk about two instances that I see a lot. Let's say, for instance, that you live in NYCHA public housing.
Mm-hmm.
I see this unfortunately a lot, which happens with families, because a lot of families live together. Let's say, for instance, that you're a grandmother, an elderly woman, and you have a grandson or a granddaughter, that's out on the street getting into some trouble. Unfortunately, if your grandson or granddaughter gets involved in too much trouble, especially if the trouble is involved on the building, somewhere on NYCHA premises,
Mm-hmm.
and they get arrested, you can potentially face eviction too as well.
Mm.
And then now you have to face the choice of, having to say, do I exclude my grandchild or my son or daughter, depending on the whatever family member situation it is, from the house in order to keep my residency because they're threatening my residency due to, my child or my grandchild or my other family members,
Mm-hmm.
activity or alleged activity.
Mm-hmm.
Another situation too that I see too as well. Um, this happens with Section 8. This also happens with NYCHA public housing, but it could also happen with private housing too as well. Let's say, for instance, that you live with somebody and they find some drugs in your house or some other illegal,
A gun.
a gun or some other illegal, things within your household. Uh, what it's called a body house case, which the city can bring against you. If they think illegal activity is going on in your house or your house is being used to further illegal activity,
Mm-hmm.
they can then put pressure on your landlord to say, if you don't kick this person out, we will sue you because you are actually facilitating an illegal business or illegal activities
Mhm.
going on in your house. And if you don't kick this person out ASAP, we're going to start suing you and we're going to prosecute you because why are you allowing this to happen unless you're in cahoots with this person?
Wow.
So, what a lot of people don't realize too is that that could put your house in danger too. And if you're living with other people, that can also put them in danger of eviction too, because they just don't come after everybody when they're evicting people of the house. When your landlord then evicts you under what they call a body house case,
Mm-hmm.
they're kicking everybody out. They're not just trying to figure out, whose drugs it is or whose
Right.
gun it was.
Everybody get the boot.
Everybody's getting a
Mhm.
boot. Right.
Wow. And what does your representation look like in both of those circumstances?
Well, both of those circumstances, it depends on the situation. In the first situation that I described, when it's dealing with somebody and they have a child or a grandchild in their house that's threatening um, their livelihood, what I do from there is, you have a talk with the person that we're representing. If it's the grandchild of the grandperson or the son or daughter,
Mm-hmm.
then we talk to them and we're just like, look, this is the situation that we're in. Your grandmother, your mother or father or whoever is facing uh, eviction due to what they're alleging of you. Now, the longer we fight this, the more that they're going to be put into danger. If you want to fight this and we do have some good circumstances, we can prove that this didn't happen, then yeah, we go ahead and fight it. We're like, nah, you're not kicking them out. We're not agreeing. We're not leaving. And you're also, when we find other representation for the other people in the family and we click up with them and we basically go ahead and fight it together, like, no, y'all ain't kicking us out. If it's a situation where it's like, okay, the person where they're accusing has done some things, you know, they're saying like, look, I have to fight my criminal case. I'm not really worried about the housing situation all like this. I also don't want to put my family members in peril. Look, I'm just going to exclude myself from the building. If I get out, they leave them alone. So I'm going to get out, they leave them alone. Boom, that's the end of the case. Sometimes that works. A lot of times, you know, that's the situation that happens, especially if they have to fight a long, drawn out criminal case. Yeah, they don't want to cause any problems with their family. For the latter situation, when they find illegal drugs or guns or anything in the house, unfortunately, that's a tougher situation. Unless there's something that we can point to, and it usually comes from our criminal colleagues such as yourself, that can point us to be like, look, the fingerprints came back. That isn't their guns. It's nobody's fingerprints on the house.
Right.
Is on that gun.
Right.
On the drugs.
Right.
Or, you know, some other thing of that sort. Like, you know, they weren't even. We can prove it was their roommate. They barely talked to their roommate.
Right.
It's, you know, it was under their roommate's bed. All the other stuff. You know, something of that sort. Unless it's a situation like that, then it's like we have to have a tough conversation with the client. Like, you know, this is what they're like. This deck is stacked against you. They're going to win if we take this to trial.
And going to trial and losing means that you get to be kicked out the house.
Yeah, you still get kicked out. Now you have an eviction on your record. So every single time that you're going into, now you have an eviction on your record for a body house case that shows that they found, you know, illegal stuff within your house. So now every single time that you go and apply for an apartment, any potential landlord could potentially see that.
Wow.
So anybody that ever looks up the docket, they can also see that too as well. If they know that you have a civil case, they can just go look that up, and you know, that's what landlords can do. A lot of times they'll see that you have an eviction, and then they'll just go, what was this eviction about? And then they'll go and look it up, and they'll see that there was a body house case. So you run that risk, and you tell people that, and then a lot of times they go like, okay, I'm going to move out.
And in both of those circumstances, how do either Section 8 or housing get notified of the arrest? What happens there?
Well, unfortunately, NYPD and public housing, whether it be Section 8, which is run through HUD, or whether it be, you know, NYCHA, which is also run through HUD too as well, they're notified automatically. They're one of the agencies that's notified automatically. So they're going to know. A lot of times within Section, you know, within NYCHA, there's just so many people. And also they have a responsibility to keep people housed, that they don't, they change their policies over the years to not go after everybody for everything. And then also to wait until the case has been closed to see what they're going to do. Of course, they're always concerned with any violent felonies. They're always concerned with any type of crimes that deal with, you know, arson, property, ruining property, and anything that deals with any type of sex crimes, whether it be against children or it be against adults. So those are the things that they're mainly worried about with any convictions. And violent crimes too, to clarify, is also, you know, any type of guns. They clarify that. They classify that as violent crimes.
If somebody is evicted from one NYCHA apartment because of an arrest, can they apply to live at a different NYCHA building? Because obviously, if they're living in a NYCHA building, they can't afford rent, like normal rent, on their own, right? So what can they do in that scenario?
Unfortunately, it isn't automatic. NYCHA, up until a couple years ago, had a policy where there was actually mandatory exclusions. So if you were convicted of certain misdemeanors, if you were convicted of certain felonies, and depending on what level of felony you were convicted, you had anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6 to an indefinite, definite, disqualification from being able to get in NYCHA's housing. Now it's a case-by-case basis. So they'll look at you, so you're not automatically disqualified, but if you've been kicked out of one NYCHA housing and you reapply for another one, they'll look at it on a case-by-case basis. A lot of times, if it's been so close to when you've been kicked out of the previous NYCHA building, they're probably going to uphold that disqualification, and you're going to be barred for a period. But it isn't automatic anymore, and there isn't a time period that's placed on anything. It is by a case-by-case basis, but they seem to be pretty much going by the same thing that they did before.
Got you. Wow, I feel like I've been working alongside you for 6 years, and I'm
learning so much right now.
Wow,
learning so much right now.
Wow.
Well, I mean, see, that's why forums like this are good. Everybody learns.
Right. Yeah, people need to know these kind of things. I feel like if people ask me what's my main message with the podcast, it's gonna be just to let them know. People think that I'm saying don't call the police, which maybe that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm actually
Yeah.
saying, yeah, just be mindful of like understanding that when a police gets involved, there's so much more that
All these
ends up
things.
happening.
Right.
I had this like small back and forth. I wouldn't call it back and forth, but I post some of these videos on Instagram and also on TikTok. And when we had the order protection conversation,
Mhm.
one of my caption was, "Just be mindful before you call the police." And then there's this woman who had, I guess, a good experience with orders of protection, where like her and her mom got into it, and the police got involved, and she actually feels that they're better off now because of that intervention. And I'm saying that's fine, and I'm actually very happy that
Worked for them.
familial relationship is better. All I'm saying is be aware. Like, you may not be the person who really wants your mother not to be able to be home. You may not be the person who wants your friend to lose their job or to lose their housing, but you didn't know that when you called the police.
Right.
So like my thesis would be just, when you call the police, there are just so much more
So much
collateral
more.
consequences other than someone just being arrested that people just need to be more aware of.
Right. Someone loses their job, right? Loses their livelihood, loses their house, can't sleep,
Right.
right? They could lose property that they had, which
Yeah.
we hadn't gotten to yet.
Right.
These are things people need to think about before calling the police on somebody,
Right.
right? It's not just, I think people have an idea, like, I call the police as a one-stop shop. The police will come and take this person out for a little bit
Right.
and things will change. It's not a one-stop shop. Like,
Right.
you could dismantle the other person's life entirely.
Right. We're gonna have a whole episode on property stuff, because like I think that's one issue that comes up all the time. I get arrested, they take my phone,
Car.
my car, my money. How do I get it back? Oh, the case got dismissed. How come I can't get my stuff back?
And I'm gonna tell you, LMRPD gonna stand
Shit.
10 toes down.
Especially if it's some money.
Right. You know, Baba, we got like 5 minutes remaining. Talk a little bit about some of the property issues that you.
Oh yeah, just like you guys just mentioned, the NYPD will take anything. So if they believe that it was either used to further a crime, was the product of a crime,
Right.
or they believe that it came from the proceeds of a crime, they'll take your stuff, and it's almost impossible for you to get it back unless, especially if it's worth of any value.
Especially if the case is still open.
Yeah, especially if the case is still open and it's worth of any value.
Right.
Once the case is closed, especially if the case has ended up favorably for you, it is legally, you have the right to get your stuff back, but there's always some hiccup with them. Like the longer they have it, the longer, it could take for them to find it. They may not know where it is. It may not be in the best condition when you get it back, depending on what your property was.
Right.
And best believe if it's money,
Right.
that something's going to end up fishy with that. When you try to get the NYPD for money, they're going to try to see if any way that they can hold on to it. Are you sure this wasn't proceeds of a crime?
Exactly.
You sure you didn't get dismissed? Oh, like they're going to try to keep on to that. We lost it.
Right.
You said you had 2,500. No, it was only 22. Like all types of stuff. So
yeah. And like I said, we're gonna have a whole episode where we dive more into this. But like, it depends on like how the property is categorized,
Yeah.
and the police get to be the ones who decide how property is categorized. And some of those categories are safekeeping, which just means like if they took your watch, or they took your chain, or your, I don't know, something that's really not necessarily a part of the crime. They will categorize it as safekeeping, and that's easier to get back.
Yeah.
Sometimes they categorize it as arrest
That's
evidence.
Yeah.
And that's them saying that no, this is part of the actual crime itself. That's harder to get back. Sometimes they're categorize it as forfeiture, which is even harder to get back.
Forfeiture and I think actually forfeiture may be easier than investigatory. Because that basically means that they just have it indefinitely. They're still investigating. They don't know what's going on with it.
Right.
And as long as it's under that realm, they can just keep. Well, we're still investigating. Especially if the case is still open. So they can just be like, we're investigating it. And a lot of cases, especially if it gets felony indicted, you could be 2-3 years before it's a long time. So they'll just have your property just sitting up there for.
And it could be a case where like it's really not a part of the crime, like getting caught with a gun. Like my phone really had nothing to do with having a gun. I mean, it's just like really no relevance at all between my phone and this gun I got caught with. But they'll keep it for however long the case is open.
And like Imani said, it's up to the arresting officer. So guess what? If the arresting officer thinks you were being a little too mouthy with them, they can just mark it up. They can mark your property however they want to mark it up. You may not ever see it again. They can mark it as investigatory. They can mark your chain as investigatory. You may never see that chain again.
Right. And they are allowed to do that, and there's nothing that we can do about that.
Yeah, it's like I laugh because like that's how ridiculous they are. Like there's really nothing for you to be able to stop it either. And so when it gets into those type of categories, the only thing that we can do is take it to a forfeiture hearing and go fight for it.
Yeah.
With cars, it's a lot harder if the person was convicted of anything that was related to what they got the car confiscated for. But for a lot of times, it's just tracking down the NYPD and making sure they give us back the property. A lot of times they don't have legal rights to it. If they did have legal rights to it, it was only for a short period. And then we were able to then, flip the tables on them. And then it's just that song and dance of, going to them, getting back the property. Or we can't find it. Or nobody's at the desk to be able to check you in to go get it. The stuff of that sort. And, it's a game for them. It's how they get money. It's, they auction people's stuff off. Every single year, get millions and millions of dollars that go right into the city's budget for auctioning people's stuff.
I can't wait to explore that more.
That people don't even realize, and a lot of it goes unclaimed because, after a while, just think about how many phones, because, they take your phone after about like maybe 2-3 months. You're just going to get another phone.
Right.
But they're going to take your phone and go sell it and go get $200-$300 for it.
Wow. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the episode. I really hope that those who tune in learn a little bit more about the ways that your life can be affected when an arrest is involved, particularly when it comes to the civil consequences, whether it be housing, whether it be your property, whether it be your job. It's just a lot. And this is just an introduction. So please feel free to look more into what these consequences are, but let this serve as just an idea or an intro to the kinds of collateral consequences people experience in the civil world. Baba, can you leave the people with just one piece of game that you have acquired? I know it's a lot, and you just dropped a lot of game already, but if you could just like leave one piece of game for somebody, what would you say?
I mean, the more you know, just be aware, be conscious of what's going on around you, and also just if something doesn't sound right, it probably isn't right, and you should look into that. And just the more you know.
Got you. Kara, anything you want to lead the people with?
I mean, this is just another tiny glimpse into how, devastating of an impact that this system has on people's lives, right? Like the system's created to keep people of color down.
Right.
And this is just one of the many ways it does it.
Right.
Lose your job, lose your house.
Right.
So, we really need to think about alternative ways of dealing with harms and accountability. So,
and I'll take that same message, but direct it at the people who are the ones who get accused. I know a lot of people out here be like, I don't care if I get arrested. Call the police. What's up? People who really think that they are willing to accept any consequence. And then what happens now? Their job's about to fire them. Their apartment's about to be at risk. So for those of you who are out here who are just maneuvering these streets, be mindful yourself that if you do get arrested, it may be more than just spending a day or two, in jail. Your whole livelihood could be at risk. But with that being said, we have come to the end of another episode of the Brothers in Law podcast. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you, Baba Tunde, for being here.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for having me again.
Fire Hoodie. We didn't even say that he represented Nigeria as well. Okay,
And actively black too.
and actively black. You heard? So we got the full, continent being represented here. So, Baba, thank you again for being here.
And he's a man of the people.
Man
That's
of
the
the
president of
people.
our union.
Right. And I feel like we
Yes, sir.
barely scratched the surface of what you can talk about.
Oh yeah, I
what
can talk
you've
for days
experienced.
about this.
I'd love to have you back to talk about union work and what
Oh yeah.
that looks like, being the union president here for the union that represents people here at Bronx Defender. So thank you for your work. It's a pleasure to know you as a colleague and also as a brother. We're about to go party and celebrate one of our other
Mhm.
brothers celebrating the birthday.
Yes, we are.
But yeah, Conrad, thank you again, man.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see where this podcast continues to grow into. And yeah, we've come down to the end of episode 4. Tune in, y'all. No, episode 5.
5.
Five. Ooh.
Hey, y'all,
Jeez.
tune in. Next episode, we'll be joined by our brother Jorge to talk about immigration.
Oh, so that's all.
All right, y'all. Peace.
All right.